The Russians struck Chernihiv with a jet-powered drone, and this is the type of weapon the enemy is currently betting on, because these drones are inexpensive to produce, fast, fly low, and pose a major problem for our interceptors. The Russians have two types of jet-powered drones, Giron and Banderol. The Banderol is, in fact, essentially a small missile with a warhead twice as large as that of a Shahad. And these drones are precisely the priority for the Russian defense industry. How many of these drones are they producing, and is China really helping the Muscovites with this? Evgenia Tereshchenko will tell us now.
If only I didn't feel so sorry, my son. If only I didn't feel so sorry, my dear son. I wish things were different.
Zhytomyr is saying goodbye to police officers Yulia Yevdokimova, Artem Zubchuk, and Svetlana Savchenko. The officers died because Russian parcels hit the police building.
Wow.
In total, about a dozen drones were flying towards Zhytomyr. The Russians used a cynical and now familiar tactic of a double-tap attack. That is exactly what killed the police officers and wounded 20 of their colleagues. Currently, Kyiv, Kharkiv, Chernihiv, and Zaporizhzhia are under attack by parcels. Literally every populated area, except perhaps for cities in western Ukraine.
The Banderol is often called a hybrid of an attack UAV and a cruise missile, but in terms of its technical characteristics, it is more akin to a jet-powered cruise missile. It has a high speed of up to 500 kilometers per hour and a flight range of up to 600 kilometers.
And this is a big problem for our air defense. Until recently, about 70% of these small missiles were flying towards the Odessa region. But the geography has expanded, as have the methods of deploying the Banderols. Previously, they were launched from the medium-altitude Orion UAV, or Mi-28 attack helicopters. Now they have also developed ground-based launchers.
They appeared in one photograph that was taken in 2025. This is more threatening because, for the enemy, well, it eliminates, for example, such a revealing factor, and, in general, the dependence on an aerial launch platform.
The main targets for these drone missiles are stationary objects with predetermined coordinates, port and logistics infrastructure, terminals, and warehouses. They do not have targeting capabilities like the Giron drones. In terms of how it's used, the Banderol resembles a small cruise missile.
This is, of course, already a small missile. It cannot be controlled online, the Banderol, but it has a warhead of about 100 kilograms, which is twice as much as the jet-powered Shahed. This is dangerous, and it can actively maneuver.
At the same time, the Banderol is cheaper than a standard cruise missile. It is assembled from civilian-grade components, so the chips and other foreign-made parts are not subject to sanctions. Chinese jet engines can also be purchased without restrictions.
The biggest bottleneck, which their production depends on, is the Chinese micro-turbojet engines. And it's precisely them, their supply, which, well, they are also sold as civilian products that are completely easily available on any Chinese marketplace.
According to our intelligence, the Russians are currently producing up to 100 Banderols per month. They planned for 150, but their appetite has grown.
They see that this is currently an effective weapon, and they will try to scale up production to somewhere around 300 or possibly 400 of these Banderols per month in order to attack our territory.
The enemy uses Banderols not only as part of a massive strike. The Russians launch them throughout the day, creating a kind of missile spam.
The enemy's recent use of such strike assets exhausts our air defense, and a new task is set for our air defense: the reaction, detection, and application of countermeasures against them. This is indeed a difficult problem.
Due to the high speed, mobile fire groups and interceptor drones are ineffective against the Banderola. Furthermore, this drone missile has been made less visible to radars.
In other words, such characteristic body contours, which primarily work to deflect radar signals and thereby complicate its detection.
The small-sized Banderola is effectively shot down by anti-aircraft missile systems or aviation, but is it really worth spending expensive missiles for IRIS-T or NASAMS on a hybrid of a missile and a drone? In Ukraine, they're looking for a cheaper alternative. Recently, the arsenal of the Defense Forces was replenished with the Alex Spadium, the first jet-powered interceptor drone in Ukraine. They're also developing our own interceptor missiles and testing foreign ones, in particular Estonian ones.
Frankenberg is a missile that is exactly that kind of option for the cheap destruction of aerial targets, such as drones, jet drones, and small-sized cruise missiles.
But a defense strategy is not just a system for intercepting the missile itself, it is also strikes on the factories where it is produced. The Banderols drones are assembled at the Kronstadt enterprise in the Moscow region city of Dubna.
Our strikes have already hit this city in the Moscow region. But indeed, the location and main production facilities have already been geolocated and identified. And as of today, I think it's just a matter of time before our security and defense forces can send their regards.
In Dubna, by the way, other enterprises working for the Russian missile program are also concentrated. Legitimate targets for Ukraine.
Evgenia Tereshchenko. We are Ukraine, Marathon United News.
More terrifying than Russian jet drones is Russian ballistics, because we have nothing to shoot them down with. So it was precisely anti-ballistic defense that was discussed during all the international meetings that took place in Kiev these days. Volodymyr Zelenskyy spoke about defense against enemy missiles with both the Americans and the Europeans, as we are waiting for our partners to supply interceptors from their stockpiles and to actively participate in the joint Freya anti-ballistic defense program. Anna Vrishina will now tell us about this joint system with the Europeans.
An ambitious defense project, a domestic analog of the American Patriot system, but in a Ukrainian version. Based on more than 10 European defense companies and involving foreign technologies.
Ukraine is capable of making its own missile and launcher. Partners will provide the necessary components and critical elements, radars, sensors, and other things that are needed. Having its own truly large-scale anti-ballistic program will be a huge help to everyone in Europe.
Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom have already joined the anti-ballistic coalition known as the Freya project. From Ukraine, the main developer is the company Firepoint, which is credited with creating drones, the Flamingo missiles, and domestic ballistic missiles. Its premiere is promised as early as this autumn. And at the same time, Ukraine will be able to produce the Franco-British Storm Shadow. London will transfer the relevant technologies to us.
I am pleased to confirm that I have approved this request and that the British and French industries will now work with Ukraine on the further development of this capability. I also urge the British industry to support the Freya project, which is intended to provide a cheaper alternative to American Patriot systems for intercepting ballistic missiles.
The arithmetic is simple. Right now, launching one Storm Shadow costs $2.5 million. American Patriots are twice as expensive, whereas Ukraine is offering the same quality, but at a fraction of the cost. The simplest missile will cost $500,000, and the advanced version with homing guidance, about $1 million. That's why Europeans, who are good at counting money, are so interested in Ukrainian anti-ballistic technology.
We really need Ukraine to be on our side, because Ukraine provides security not only for itself, but for all of Europe. I am absolutely convinced that membership in the European Union is the best security guarantee that exists. But I am also convinced that NATO membership will mean security for the rest of the NATO countries and will become a significant deterrent to Russia.
Each of the countries participating in the anti-ballistic coalition will make its own technological contribution. Germany and Sweden will integrate radars and surveillance systems to detect enemy missiles and will join in the development of air defense guidance systems. France will be responsible for fire control. Italy, Great Britain will share their experience in developing warheads and high-speed interception, as well as optics and electronics, while Norway will provide software for target coordination. Denmark, the Netherlands, and Spain will make financial contributions and provide their testing grounds for future air defense batteries. But the missile itself and the launcher for intercepting Russian ballistics will be assembled by a Ukrainian manufacturer. The pan-European Freya project could revolutionize anti-ballistic defense, essentially putting the production of air defense missiles on an assembly line. While the U.S. currently produces 600 interceptors for Patriot systems, the Freya project plans for up to 2,000 per year. The developers promised to deliver the first missiles by the end of the year and to establish mass production by the middle of next year. In other words, this new program could help Ukraine and Europe quickly and affordably build a reliable air defense structure. From Brussels, Anna Hershina, We Are Ukraine, Marathon United News.
The CIA director's visit to Moscow could yield results. That is how Donald Trump commented on John Ratcliffe's arrival in Russia. And he added that America wants the war in Ukraine to end as soon as possible. The CIA director visited Moscow the day before, and this is the first time in 5 years. Officially, neither the White House nor the Kremlin gave advance notice of Ratcliffe's visit. The American publication Axios, citing sources in Washington, reported that America asked the Ukrainians not to strike Moscow during their delegation's visit. An American military plane landed at Vnukovo Airport the day before. It is not known for certain who Ratcliffe met with or what issues were raised during the meetings. This visit is connected to contacts between the intelligence services of Russia and the USA. That is how the Kremlin commented on it. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal suggests that Mr. Ratcliffe informed Putin that America is aware of the mobilization preparations in Russia and warned him against possible escalation with NATO countries. Volodymyr Zelenskyy awarded American billionaire Elon Musk the Order of Liberty. This is one of Ukraine's highest honors. The corresponding decree was published on the official website of the president for outstanding personal merits in protecting the lives of people and freedom and for developing relations between the peoples of Ukraine and the United States of America. That is verbatim. American businessman and founder of SpaceX, Elon Musk, has been helping Ukraine since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. It was through his assistance that the Ukrainian military was provided with Starlink communication terminals, which are critically important on the front lines. And despite sometimes ambiguous statements regarding the war in Ukraine, Musk's assistance is significant. This year, SpaceX also blocked Starlink satellite communication for the Russian military on the front lines. Well, and Ukraine is currently asking for permission for the terminals to operate in Russian airspace for the defense forces, so that our long-range strikes can be more effective and, well, more precise. Actually, just like how one of the largest Russian oil refineries in Kestovo, Nizhny Novgorod region was brightly burning tonight. This is the fourth largest oil refinery with a capacity of nearly 17 million tons of oil per year. This refinery is one of the key suppliers of gasoline, diesel fuel, and aviation kerosene for the central regions of Russia and for the enemy's military-industrial complex. And also, a fire following our drone attack completely destroyed a giant wild berries warehouse in Kutovsk. That's in the Tambov region. The fire there was so intense that the authorities urged locals not to go outside for the next 2 days due to the danger of carbon monoxide poisoning. So, following the Wildberries empire, Ukraine has started methodically burning down the Russian Azan as well. And this is the second largest marketplace network in enemy territories. The consequences are not just burnt clothes or electronics. It is the paralysis of the logistical arteries through which the occupiers were transporting drones and ammunition to the front. Ozan's company shares have already plummeted, and the Russian economy is suffering billions in losses. What's more, the Kremlin has started using the chaos as a cover to simply seize businesses from their owners. Olena Honcharенko will tell us all the details about this explosive shopping spree.
Russians are no longer waiting for their packages. They are waiting for the next Bavovna. After Ukrainian drones effectively wiped out the Wildberries logistics empire, it was the turn of the second giant of Russian online retail, Ozon. Last week, Ukrainian Defense Forces put on a fiery show in southern Russia. In just one night, they attacked 3 major Ozon logistics centers at once. In Dagestan, Stavropol Krai, and Adiga, it was burning so brightly that it could be seen for kilometers. In just a few hours, over 315,000 square meters of warehouse space burned down, containing millions of Russian goods, from clothing and electronics to food products. The hub in the Dagestani village of Tyuby suffered the most painful blow. This wasn't just a warehouse, but a strategic international hub through which Russia was trying to establish supply routes to Iran and Azerbaijan. Now, this southern corridor is blocked by fire. The situation is terrifying. In total, over 4 days, Ukraine hit 6 Azov warehouses. The aggressor country's giant hubs have turned to ash, and the company's stock has plummeted. After the attacks, the marketplace disabled payment upon delivery, and goods can now only be paid for in advance. At first, our defense forces went after the market leader, Wildberries. In total, they struck over 20 facilities. 8 of the largest centers were destroyed, and the losses reached a staggering $10 billion. Now that the first network has been crippled, it's Ozon's turn. But why marketplaces specifically? First of all, these giant hubs have long since turned into dual-use logistics bases. It is precisely through them that the Russian military purchases and supplies ammunition, drones, thermal imagers, and radios to the front line.
The defense forces have opened an account with the destroyed logistics hub of the Russian company Ozon. Systematic strikes on dual-use goods storage centers complicate the enemy's logistics and negatively affect the Russian economy as a whole, from a statement by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.
Secondly, this is a colossal blow to the Russian wallet. According to Reuters estimates, these companies, along with smaller competitors, make up a significant part of the economy. Up to 90% of Russians use these marketplaces. So the strikes have literally brought the war into every Russian apartment. In the Kremlin, they initially promised to think about how to help businesses that found themselves in a fiery trap, but instead they cynically fleeced them. Putin's new decree effectively allowed for the seizure of private companies that were unable to protect themselves from Ukrainian attacks. And while our drones are destroying the enemy's infrastructure from the sky, the Kremlin itself is finishing it off from within, legalizing large-scale state robbery. Alina Honcharenko, We Ukraine Marathon United News.
Powerful explosions in temporarily occupied Donetsk. Locals counted about 10 of them. It seems that missiles and drones were flying towards the city. One of the hits was on a building occupied by research and industrial institutions, propaganda telegram channels report. It is also possible that the target could have been the headquarters of the 51st Guards Combined Arms Donetsk Army. After the attack, huge plumes of smoke rose in various parts of the city. Our general staff has not yet officially reported what was successfully hit. Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in the frontline Zaporizhzhia region today, together with Minister of Defense Yevhen Kamara and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Mikhailo Derpatsy. At the command post, the president met with soldiers of the 95th Separate Policia Air Assault Brigade who were fighting in the Oleksandrivka direction. Zelenskyy presented awards to the soldiers. In addition, the president heard reports from the commanders of the directions and announced, "Our positions in the Donetsk region will be strengthened thanks to 2 updated groups commanded by heroes of Ukraine, Denis Prokopenko and Andrei Beletsky." In fact, the president presented the Hero Star to Beletsky just today.
The second important thing for today, I spoke with the commanders here in the Zaporizhzhia direction. There will be more than necessary resources. This concerns the RPVs. Decisions are needed so that there is more production and more procurement. There will be decisions regarding a more systematic approach to mid-range strikes. We've agreed with the minister and the commander-in-chief on the necessary personnel decisions.
Zelenskyy also held a meeting regarding the situation on the front line and defensive operations in key directions. The meeting was attended by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the commanders of the Air Assault Forces, the Unmanned Systems Forces, and the commanders of the 3rd Army Corps and Azov.